The terrifying spiritual storm frightened everyone. In the stone garden on the 9th floor, the onlookers were all excited. Everyone stared at the dazzling stone under Jason's sword. What is it? What exactly can be solved? Why are there strange phenomena in heaven and earth? Visions of heaven and earth, visions of heaven and earth, this is a sign of the unraveling of a divine object. Everyone was shocked. It was rare in the entire history of Lingdo City to unravel the phenomena of heaven and earth by unraveling the stone. Every time a phenomenon of heaven and earth appeared, it meant that an extremely rare divine object had been unearthed. The dazzling spiritual light emitted bursts of brilliant rays of light, illuminating everyone's faces, but everyone was unwilling to move their eyes. They were very excited and kept rushing forward. Want to see what the solution is? What happened? Please step back and don't hinder the guests from unraveling the stone. Master Jing from the Holy King's Gambling Crystal Workshop spoke out in the stone garden. All the strong men suppressed the excitement in their hearts and stepped back one after another. This won't really reveal anything extraordinary. Something? Kellen and others were surprised. As members of the younger generation, they had long been squeezed into nowhere by a group of strong men. Visions of heaven and earth. Leorio's expression was solemn, and his face was so dark that he could squeeze out water. This is the vision that the stone analyzer most longs to see. A strange object must be born. Expose it, solve it quickly. Exclamation point. Everyone in the stone garden was excited and wanted to see immediately what was sealed in the snowflower stone. They were anxious. Jason gathered his mind and pulled out the dissipated spiritual energy. The spiritual energy dissipated, and the cracked alabaster stone returned to normal. Only the faint brilliance circulated, attracting people's attention. Crack! The black heavy sword in Jason's hand was gently chopped down. With the crisp sound of the stone skin shattering, the stone skin on the surface of the entire stone completely fell off. A stream of colorful brilliance flowed out, illuminating the surrounding area. Neon. This is a crystal that exudes multicolored light. It actually has a human face and is so dazzling. However, although it is colorful, it rarely has much spiritual energy fluctuations and is extremely restrained. This is the 5-color holy crystal. Master Jing from Gambling Crystal Workshop spoke with surprise on his face. The 5-color holy crystal turned out to be the 5-color holy crystal. The surrounding strong men also exclaimed in surprise. The 5-color holy crystal is a kind of holy crystal, representing the 5 elements. The spiritual energy contained in it is not as pure as the holy crystal, but contains a variety of attributes. The reason why the spiritual crystals extracted from the crystal ore are more precious than the spiritual cores and the spiritual crystals mined from ordinary mineral veins is precisely because of the spiritual power contained in them. In the spiritual core obtained from the spirit beast, body, although it has a powerful the spiritual power is extremely violent, and ordinary spiritual masters cannot absorb it directly. It needs special transformation. The spiritual power contained in ordinary spiritual crystals is extremely restrained. It is full of impurities but is extracted from the crystal ore. Spiritual crystal is extremely pure and can be used for the direct cultivation of spiritual masters. The reason why the holy crystal is precious is because the spiritual power contained in it is so pure that people cannot imagine, and at the same time, the level of spiritual power is also extremely high. Even for 8th level Emperor spiritual masters and even 9th level Holy Spirit masters, it is quite helpful. More importantly, it can be absorbed by spiritual masters of any attribute. Although this 5-color holy crystal is rarer and more precious than the holy crystal in terms of properties, the spiritual power contained in it is the spiritual power of the 5 elements. A fire spiritual master must refine the fire spiritual power in order to absorb it. Talent, so in terms of value, the 5-color holy crystal is not as high as the holy crystal. Such a large piece of colorful holy crystal is estimated to be around 150 million spiritual coins. A strong man said. It's almost the same. The value of the 5-color holy crystal is a little bit lower than that of the holy crystal. Moreover, this 5-color holy crystal is one size smaller than the holy crystal that Leo Rio solved earlier. 150 million spiritual coins is a fair estimate. Everyone spoke out one after another, with a lot of excitement, loss, regret, and gloating in their tone. Of course, 150 million is just its most basic estimate. If it really wants to be put up for auction, it will definitely be more than that. It's a priceless treasure. It's estimated at 150 million spiritual coins, haha, it's just estimated at 150 million spiritual coins. After hearing the comments from the seniors around him, Cologne and the other young masters immediately shouted excitedly. When the vision of heaven and earth emerged from the snow-white stone in front of Jason, Cologne and the others were stunned, fearing Jason turned around and frightened their hearts to beat wildly. Now, after getting the valuations of the strong men around them, a feeling of surviving a disaster suddenly rose from their hearts. 150 million. Tens of millions of spirit coins, this is not a low price, but unfortunately, it is much worse than the 200 million spirit coins of the elder brother Xingjing. Haha, that is to say, according to the regulations, this 5-color holy crystal should also belong to the eldest brother? I have to say that Jason is still good at identifying crystals, but his luck is a bit worse. The young people shouted excitedly. No, although this 5-color holy crystal is rare, it won't cause a strange phenomenon in the world. There must be something that has not yet been solved. In the stone garden, Master Jing frowned. In front of the stone, Jason looked solemn and carefully recorded the stone skin next to the 5-color holy crystal. The entire 5-color holy crystal suddenly appeared in front of everyone. Hey, look, everyone, is there something in this 5-color holy crystal? There seems to be something. This seems to be a spiritual elixir. How come there is a spiritual elixir in the 5-color holy crystal? Could it be that it grew in the ancient spiritual mine tens of thousands of years ago, and then the spiritual crystal was formed and was accidentally sealed into the crystal ore? The entire stone garden instantly boiled, everyone was talking about it, and they spoke excitedly. They kept pushing forward, wanting to witness all this. The colorful brilliance flowed slowly and was not dazzling. Everyone could see what it contained at a glance. It was indeed a plant. What kind of plant is this? Why are there only 5 small fruits, but no leaves? 5-color small fruits. Each fruit is in the same color of spiritual crystal. No wonder I couldn't tell their faces before. Yes, it's really strange. Appearing in Wutsai is in the holy crystal some kind of rare treasure? Maybe it's just an ordinary elixir that was accidentally sealed back then. Many people speculated, and some elixir masters came forward to tell the difference. This is an elixir that is only as long as a thumb, with only a small rhizome. On the rhizome, there are only 5 small fruits of 5 colors. The color of each small fruit is the same as the background color of the colorful holy crystal. Strange abnormal. The moment he saw this 5-colored fruit, Jason couldn't help but have a possibility in his mind, and after carefully identifying it, his eyes couldn't help but widen. Previously. No matter when he saw the holy crystal or the 5-colored holy crystal, his face was expressionless, but now he looked excited. There was a hint of joy in his eyes. The 5 elements fruit is actually the 5 elements fruit. Jason was so excited that he almost shouted. No wonder this snow spar looks so old, but its microstructure is only more than 10,000 years ago. Jason suddenly understood in his heart, and when he was extremely excited, what on earth is this? Spirit fruit? Fruit with 5 colors, never heard of it. In the stone garden, some spiritual medicine masters couldn't identify it after careful identification, while Rongxing, Dinisha, Sri Lanka and others were also confused. They have never heard of elixir in this shape. Give way, everyone, give way. At this moment, an old voice came from outside. Hearing this voice, everyone stepped aside. This was an old man with red hair. He was not tall, but he had an inexplicable power. Ha's great humiliation. Master Huas is here, let him take a look. This Huas is a master in the Holy King's gambling crystal workshop. He is extremely profound in his knowledge of elixirs. He is a 7th level intermediate elixir master and is also famous in Lingdo City. I heard earlier that someone had extracted an unknown elixir from the crystal ore, so the people from the Holy King Gambling Crystal Workshop immediately invited the elixir master over. As soon as he entered the crowd, Haas carefully looked at the 5-color holy crystal in front of Jason. At this sight, Haas was stunned for an instant. Immediately, he rushed forward with excitement, looked at it carefully, his lips trembled and his face looked shocked. This is the 5 elements fruit. Yes, this must be the 5 elements fruit. Huas looked excited and said firmly. The 5 elements fruit? Everyone is confused. Many people have never heard of the name of this elixir. However, some powerful elixir masters were filled with shock after hearing the name. Then they showed a look of surprise. The 5 elements Tao fruit is an extremely peculiar elixir. Its growth is full of legend. It must grow in crystal mines and absorb the nutrients in the spiritual crystals to grow. Its efficacy is even more powerful and amazing. Its 5 small fruits are divided into 5 colors: gold, green, red and gray, which represent the 5 energies of metal, wood, water, fire and earth in the 5 elements. Each small fruit contains a fragment of the law of the 5 elements. As long as it is taken and absorbed by a spiritual master, one can master certain laws in it. It is an extremely heaven-defying elixir. In the Stern Continent, as long as a spiritual master advances to the 7th level of the Imperial Spiritual Master, each level of promotion must understand certain laws and attributes before he can advance. And these 5 elements of Tao fruit are very important for spiritual masters who practice the 5 elements of attributes. It is said that it is a heaven-defying spiritual object. If divided according to the level of treasures, this 5 elements Tao fruit is an out-and-out 8th level treasure. Even among 8th level treasures, it is also extremely rare, even more rare than Jason's in the spiritual world. The Ice Spirit Sacred Fruit obtained from Master Silton of the Kingdom of Weiss at the Medicine Master Conference is much more precious. It's just that the growth of this elixir is too unnatural. It must grow in the spiritual crystal to be able to grow. And the conditions are extremely harsh. The maturity of each fruit must only by absorbing the spiritual energy equivalent to at least an 8th level low-level spiritual core can it mature, and the growth period of each small fruit is also extremely long, and it takes 1,000 years to mature. In ancient times, when the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was extremely abundant, this kind of spiritual fruit could still be occasionally found by powerful elixir masters, but today, thousands of years later, this kind of spiritual fruit has almost disappeared. No wonder Master Haas looked so shocked when he saw the 5 elements Tao fruit. Oh my god, this elixir is actually an 8th level treasure. Incredible, incredible. Jason's luck must be too good. After hearing Master Haas's explanation, everyone around him, the strong ones, were unable to calm down and spoke in shock. Haha, 8th level treasures, 8th level treasures, even 8th level treasures can be cut out of snow crystals. Master, you are really amazing. Rong Xing burst out laughing, his face full of pride. Smile. On the side, Dini Shah and others also had dull faces, completely in shock. 8th level treasures can definitely be regarded as the most top-notch treasures on the mainland, because 9th level treasures are too difficult to find, not to mention that the 5 elements Tao fruit is the most top-notch among 8th level treasures. Even though the Lubanar kingdom where Dini Shah is located is a rather huge kingdom and the strongest force in the northwest, the number of 8th level treasures possessed by the entire kingdom can actually be counted on one hand, and they are usually even more. They are just ordinary 8th level treasures. Little brother, if you are willing to give up this 5 elements Tao fruit to Lao Chan is willing to exchange it for a 7th level imperial potion. Haas said solemnly, with a solemn expression. 8th level treasures are too precious for a master of elixirs. If a 7th level elixir master wants to advance, preparing ordinary elixirs will not have much effect at all. The only way is to work hard to prepare better levels. Only with the magical elixir can you gain something. I am willing to pay 3 to 5 trillion spiritual coins, and you will give me the 5 elements Tao fruit. An old man also said. 8th level treasures are priceless. Jason, I am the shopkeeper of the Lingbao Medicine Pavilion. I am willing to use any finished 7th level treasure in this pavilion in exchange for this elixir of yours. Many old men came up one after another. In front of him, he spoke out the quotation and his eyes were fiery. From the previous introduction by Huaz, everyone has already understood the efficacy of the 5 elements Tao fruit. This is a Tao fruit that contains fragments of laws. After the 7th level, each level of advancement requires an understanding of the laws. For these powerful for the spiritual masters, as long as a master of elixirs is asked to prepare these 5 elements Tao fruits, they will be 5 bottles of elixirs that all 8th level emperor spiritual masters will rob. Even 9th level spiritual masters will take action. Everyone knew the value of these 5 elements Tao fruits, and they were extremely excited. Facing the fiery crowd, Jason shook his head and said, "Everyone, this 5 elements Tao fruit has its own use and will not be sold." The reason why Jason was excited earlier was because he learned a lot from Sevlin. After learning about the shortcomings of spiritual training, he knew that as a multi-system spiritual master, he must advance in multiple attributes at the same time so as not to affect his future training. To advance from the 6th level to the 7th level, you must understand some of the laws. Even with Jason's genius, he dare not say that he can advance at the same time, but after having these 5 elements Tao fruit, it is completely different. Jason's attributes are mainly the 5 elements attributes. With these 5 elements Tao fruit, Jason will have a much easier time on the road to becoming a 7th level imperial spiritual master. As soon as he said these words, the crowd suddenly let out sighs. Some people even rolled their eyes, trying to think of some trick. However, when they thought of Jason's identity, many people stopped thinking. Although Jason only comes from a remote place like the northwest of the mainland, in any case, he is the champion of the mainland elite competition and is in the spotlight. Although joining the Twin Towers may not necessarily be of a high level, it is of great significance. The Twin Towers will never allow anything to happen to him in Lingdo City, there is no doubt about it. Looking at the snowspar stone powder scattered in front of Jason, those strong men who had previously complained that Jason did not know how to choose stones and that there was no treasure in the snowspar stone, all shut their mouths at this moment. In fact, the reason Jason chose this snowspar was because he discovered that the dissipation of spiritual energy in this snowspar did not seem to flow naturally, but was absorbed by something, which caused the dissipation of spiritual energy. It is so thorough that it looks like it has a history of tens of thousands of years, but in fact, it only lasts for nearly 10,000 years. Haha, it's time to harvest the spoils. Among the crowd, Saint Rong laughed loudly and walked up to Leo Rio and others. Wow, this piece of Saint Crystal is really big. I guess it's very valuable, right? Saint Melt looked at the Saint Crystal in front of Leo Rio, deliberately circled it twice, pretending to be shocked, and then took the Saint Crystal entirely. Rise. By the way, there is also the 100 million spirit coins. I will wait for my master to take them. You guys are so polite. Seeing that we are so enthusiastic, not only giving money but also treasures, it really makes us ashamed. He laughed. On the opposite side, Leorio's face was gloomy, and Colum and others looked as if their parents had died, barely able to cry. Jason actually cut out the treasure from the snow crystal. Such a huge contrast made it was almost too much for them to bear. Although they were unwilling to do so, they had no choice but to stare with big eyes and helplessly watch the melting saint move the Saint Crystal that was as big as a human head away. Jason waved his hand and put the Saint crystal brought by melting Saint into the space ring. My little friend, since the bets are over, why don't we go have a drink together? Haha, the Jason brothers won the championship in this elite competition. Our Moore family has booked a table of wine and food at Bowling Restaurant. Little friend Jason, you must go. At this time, although the gambling was over, the entire ninth floor stone garden was even more lively, and everyone was offering an olive branch to Jason, wanting to get acquainted with him. In the previous crystal gambling, Jason cut out the precious crystal twice, despite the unanimous disapproval of everyone. Everyone felt weird and were deeply curious about Jason's achievements in crystal gambling. Even Jason, it was entirely necessary for Sun to get acquainted with the champion of this continental elite competition just by luck. Haha, seniors, I want to take a look at the 10th floor of the Holy King's Crystal Gambling House. I heard that the 10th floor of the Holy King's Crystal Gambling House contains some precious crystal ores. I also want to take a look. Jason smiled and said he really wanted to see the precious crystal ore from the Holy King's gambling crystal mine. Although he was a 9th level elixir Saint Master in his previous life, the crystal ore inside the ancient spiritual mine he had seen was not many. In fact, in the era when he was born, some of the crystal ores from the ancient spiritual mines had been solved. However, no one dared to enter the real depths of the ancient spiritual mines. Those real crystal ores were all. The answer is one less one. It is now the 3rd day. Tomorrow, Jason will go to the Alchemist Tower. It is a rare visit, so naturally he has to see enough. When the next time he comes, it will be the year of the monkey and the horse. However, with Jason's thoughts in mind, the faces of the people in the Holy King Gambling Crystal Square suddenly changed. Although this time Jason and the others made more than 200 million spiritual coins from the solution of the stone, but compared with what the two of them cut out, it was a bit unsatisfactory. But they also knew that even if Jason didn't figure it out, someone else would figure it out. There was no reason to stay outside the door when they went out to do business. Moreover, the crystal ore in the 10th level is not sold with spiritual coins, but is exchanged for things. At least 7th level treasures must be used in exchange. No matter what is cut out, the Holy King Gambling Crystal Workshop will make a lot of money. Nothing to worry about. However, due to Jason's previous incredible performance, the faces of the people in the Holy King Gambling Crystal Square changed slightly and they felt a little awkward. What, this Jason is still going to the 10th floor? The Supreme Stone Garden, that is the Supreme Stone Garden, every stone is a treasure in the stone. If you want to unlock the stone, you can't buy it with a price, you can only use 7 exchange treasures above the level. Come on, let's take a look. Hearing that Jason was going to the stone garden on the 10th floor, everyone was excited and followed Jason one after another towards the 10th floor. Walk to the stone garden. The stone garden on the 10th floor is located in the deepest part of the Holy King's Gambling Crystal Square. Usually very few people show up, but this time it was extremely lively, with a large number of strong people pouring in. This is a pure land, like a garden outside the world, full of tranquility and comfort. There is a faint fragrance of flowers in the air. Except for an old man with gray hair who is practicing in the middle of the stone garden, the entire stone garden is extremely quiet. However, the influx of a large group of people now broke the tranquility instantly. Jason was helpless about this. He walked into the stone garden under the guidance of the staff and looked at everything around him. The entire stone garden is large, green and lush, surrounded by mountains and rivers. However, there are not many strange stones in it, only a dozen or so, distributed throughout the stone garden. After walking through the shade of a tree, Jason and others saw the first strange stone. It's incredible. Is this stone formed naturally? Isn't it an imitation? Rongxing exclaimed in surprise when he saw it for the first time. This is an extremely strange stone, like a huge millstone, as black as ink, but it is covered with some light spots, which are constantly flashing, just like the night sky in summer. This stone didn't look like crystal ore at all, and Rongxing wondered if it was imitated by someone from Gambling Crystal Workshop. Little brother, please don't talk nonsense. These stones are the sacred stones transported from the Huangguling mine after a lot of hard work by our Gambling Crystal Workshop. The staff of the Gambling Crystal Workshop had displeasure on their faces. This stone is called the Starlight Stone. Every night, it can absorb the power of starlight. During the day, it will glow slightly, which is extremely magical. There is a master of crystal magic. It was once deduced that this starlight stone absorbs the essence of the sun and the moon every night and excretes waste essence and miscellaneous gas during the day. The aura of heaven and earth contained in it for countless years must have been brewing to create a shocking divine object. If it hadn't been determined by this crystal ore. The price is too high. The Holy King Gambling Crystal Square stipulates that finished treasures of at least the 7th level Imperial Elixir level can be exchanged. I am afraid that they have been unlocked by some people from big families. An old man sighed with emotion, obviously disappointed. This starlight stone is extremely tempting, but its price prohibits many people. 7th level treasures are also divided into high and low. Like a 7th level spiritual core, although it is also a 7th level treasure, it cannot be compared with the 7th level natural treasures such as Yunwu spirit fruit, and Yunwu. Although the spirit fruit is precious, it is far from the 7th level imperial potion, the regeneration potion, which was prepared by a master of elixirs. The spiritual potion is the rarest treasure on the entire continent. Like the 7th level imperial potion, it is almost the most precious thing among all 7th level treasures. If this starlight stone could be exchanged for an ordinary 7th level treasure, then it would have been replaced by the spiritual potion long ago. Some big families in Doqing were solved, but the Holy King Gambling Crystal House wanted to exchange it for a bottle of 7th level imperial potion. The gambling was too great, but no one was willing. During the introduction by the people around him, Jason stepped forward and observed carefully. He judged that this stone was born like this and was not a man-made imitation. Little brother, how are you? Some old men asked with expectant faces, eager to hear the judgment of this crystal gambling master. Jason didn't answer, just shook his head slightly. Finally, he stood in front of the starlight stone for a long time and left helplessly. Although he could see some things from this starlight stone that others did not know, but as mentioned before, the price of a bottle of 7th level imperial potion was too high. Jason could not judge yet. Is the value of the things contained in the starlight stone higher than a bottle of 7th level imperial potion? Little brother, come and take a look at this strange stone. Before Jason could take 2 steps, an old man spoke again. What stood in front of Jason was a round piece of crystal ore. On the crystal ore, there were complex patterns, like a picture. This stone, Jason was shocked and felt very uneasy. From this stone, he felt a unique Taoist charm, which was extremely strong. More importantly, the patterns on this stone were not messy, but seemed to have some unique rules, like outlining some kind of complex patterns. On the side, the master of alchemy, the melting saint, was already stunned and said, "These spiritual patterns are not carved by humans, are they? They are innate." Jason gently brushed these lines with his fingers and identified them. He knew the art of crystal very well and could tell at a glance that these lines were definitely formed by nature and were nourished by heaven and earth, rather than being carved by man. Little brother, how are you? Are you interested in taking action on this stone? A group of old men spoke up, trying their best to encourage him to unravel the stone. Jason stood silently for a long time and finally left. He was really not sure. If the crystal ore here is like the 9th floor and costs 1 to 200 million spiritual coins, he might buy it. After all, to Jason, spiritual coins are nothing at all, not to mention the fact that he bought them from Lioli before. In O's hands, he earned 100 million spiritual coins. It's a pity that every crystal ore here can only be exchanged for something. The 7th level treasure is also extremely important to Jason himself, so naturally he will not spend it on this unpredictable gambling crystal. "Master, come and see the stone." Before Jason could leave the spirit stone, the cry of melting saint suddenly came from the side. Jason walked slowly. Standing in front of the Rongsheng was a piece of crystal ore that looked like the sole of his foot. Light and strong spiritual power fluctuations came from the crystal ore, which was surprising. "What is this?" Jason's eyes narrowed and he stepped forward. Ordinary crystal ore will not have the slightest fluctuation of spiritual power at all, so it is difficult to judge, but the fluctuation of spiritual power on this crystal ore is so strong that even ordinary spiritual masters can clearly feel it, and even more so. Needless to say, he is a crystal master like Jason. "How about it?" "This crystal ore is called the God's Foot Stone. Such a powerful spiritual power fluctuation must contain a rare treasure. Although it requires a 7th-level imperial potion to redeem it, once the world-shattering power inside is unlocked, this divine item is definitely worth more than a bottle of 7th-level imperial potion." An old man spoke in a very seductive voice. Jason observed carefully for a long time, then nodded and said, "Old sir, this piece of crystal ore is indeed extraordinary. You can buy it and cut it open. Then you will unlock the amazing artifact. Don't forget about me. This is it." The smile on the old man's face stopped abruptly, and he said nonchalantly, "Well, after all, you need a 7th-level imperial potion to exchange for this divine foot stone. I'll think about it later." Jason smiled lightly, and then left. Although there were strong spiritual power fluctuations on the previous crystal ore, Jason felt that although the crystal ore emitted extremely strong spiritual power fluctuations, the inside of the crystal ore was probably not as good as it appeared on the surface. "Little brother, come and take a look here." "Little friend Jason, there is also a strange stone here, you can take a look." After Jason left the God's Foot Stone, there were waves of greetings from all around. Looking at the instigating strong men, Jason smiled bitterly and said, "Everyone, you are coming down to the 10th floor just to have a look at the legendary Supreme Stone Garden. You have no idea of unraveling the stone. If anyone among you, if you want to unravel the stone, you can enjoy it here." After hearing what Jason said, some of the strong men present who encouraged Jason to unravel the stone showed embarrassed looks on their faces. Here, the prices of the strange stones are extremely high. If they were sure, they would have solved all these strange stones long ago. The reason why they called them Jason was just because they were not sure, did not want to take risks, and wanted Jason to solve them. Now that Jason has made it so clear, the strong men who had been encouraging Jason to unravel the stones before now stopped talking and just introduced some of the strange stones here for Jason. "Master." Just as Jason was admiring the strange stones surrounded by everyone, Claire's slight call suddenly came from the side. Jason turned his head and saw Claire walking blankly towards a crystal ore, with a dull expression on her face and an inexplicable murmur in her tone. "Claire," Jason stepped forward, gently patted Claire on the shoulder, and asked at the same time. As soon as his hand touched Claire's shoulder, it suddenly bounced away. "This Claire, what's wrong with you?" Jason's face was solemn, and he sounded worried. In Jason's opinion, Claire's body was like a furnace at this moment, extremely hot all over. If he didn't come into contact with her, he wouldn't feel it at all. But once he came into contact with her, Jason felt extremely hot. This filled Jason's heart with great worry. "Master, this crystal ore," Claire feels like there is something inside that is attracting Claire, calling this Claire. Claire's face flushed, she murmured, her eyes blurred, staring not far away a piece of crystal ore. "Crystal ore?" Jason asked in confusion, and then his eyes fell in front of Claire. "This is a piece of red crystal ore, like a dragon head, with 2 protruding dragon horns. The entire dragon head is covered with dragon scales, lifelike and extremely lifelike." "This crystal ore?" Jason stepped forward, but before he could take 2 steps out, Jason felt the black heavy sword on his back, as if it was being burned by flames, and suddenly he felt it got hot, and as he continued to get closer, the black heavy sword behind him became even more frighteningly hot. is this?" he said with surprise on his face. The hotness revealed in the black heavy sword was unbearable even for him, a 6th-level senior spiritual master with an 8th-level peak body. However, the strange thing is that no matter how hot the black ape behind him is, the many powerful Emperor Spiritualists and Emperor Spiritualists around him do not feel the slightest reaction. Jason waved his hand, and the black ape behind his back was immediately stored in the space ring, and the burning breath disappeared. Jason took a few steps to the red dragon head crystal ore and kept checking it. This kind of stone? Jason's brows furrowed deeply at just the first glance. He had never seen this kind of stone before. As a 9th-level elixir master from 3,000 years later, Jason's understanding of the crystal ores in the ancient spiritual mines is much deeper than anyone else in this era. There are many crystal ores that are not clear in this era. 3,000 years later, there is a lot of data, but in Jason's impression, he has never heard of such a stone being produced in the ancient spirit mine. This dragon head stone comes from the ancient spiritual mine. This kind of red stone has never been unearthed in the ancient spiritual mine before. It can isolate all spiritual senses from searching. Even the master of crystal art, no matter how powerful he is in identifying crystals, it's also impossible to pry out even a shred of the mystery of this dragon head stone. It's extremely mysterious. On the side, the staff of the Holy King Gambling Crystal Shop explained. Jason didn't speak. He frowned and kept walking back and forth around the dragon's head stone. After carefully identifying it for a long time, he said, "What's the price of this dragon's head stone?" "Any high price? Any quality 7th-level treasure can be exchanged for this dragon head stone," the staff member said. "I want this dragon head stone." Looking at Claire, who was looking forward to it, Jason said firmly. Suddenly, the entire stone garden was silent. "R.O. What, Jason really wants to unlock the stone? It's the dragon head stone, the dragon head stone." This after hearing that Jason wanted to buy this stone, everyone was stunned. At the beginning, although they kept calling Jason and tempting him to unlock the stone, in everyone's mind, they still didn't have much hope that Jason would buy the crystal ore to unlock it. After all, the price of every stone in the 10th floor of the Supreme Stone Garden is too expensive. At least it needs to be exchanged for 7th-level treasures. Many of them still require finished Imperial-level elixirs, and even some, and it requires 8th-level treasures, which even these big families can't afford, let alone a young man from the Northwest like Jason. So when Jason really wanted to buy the crystal ore, everyone was stunned. "Sir, you," the staff member of the Holy King Gambling Crystal Shop who led Jason to visit, was also stunned and looked at Jason in disbelief. The price of crystal ore in this Supreme Stone Garden is so expensive that it often takes several years to sell one piece. Moreover, the ones purchased are some of the local superpowers in Lingdo City, or they come from the mainland. Some aristocratic families and nobles, like a young man like Jason, came to buy crystal ore, but no one had ever heard of them. "What? Aren't the strange stones here for sale?" Seeing the staff on the side staying there and saying nothing, Jason couldn't help but frown and said softly. Oh, sell," the staff member recovered from the surprise and nodded hurriedly. "Little brother, this dragon head stone requires a 7th-level treasure or above, and it must be the top grade among the 7th-level treasures before it can be exchanged. I wonder, little brother, what is the treasure you want to exchange for?" At this time, the old man who had been sitting cross-legged quietly in the middle of the stone garden to practice, suddenly opened his eyes and slowly came to Jason. His hair is gray and he looks very old, but his face has no wrinkles at all and is extremely rosy. A faint coercion is inadvertently revealed from his body, which is surprising. This man is the master of the 10th floor of the Supreme Stone Garden. His attainments are at the pinnacle, enough to intimidate everyone present. Jason didn't speak, but waved his hand, and a jade box appeared in his hand. It was the same jade box that Leo Rio had used to hold the Saint Crystal. Jason opened the jade box, and a holy crystal, the size of a football, appeared in everyone's eyes, emitting bright white light. Rays of holy light continued to emit from the holy crystal, illuminating the entire stone garden. One slice. After seeing the saint crystal that Jason took out, everyone present was inexplicably surprised. Could it be that the 7th level treasure that Jason wanted to exchange for the dragon head stone was the saint crystal? The old man's divine eyes suddenly became extremely bright, and 2 rays of light shot out instantly. This piece of holy crystal is the size of a human head. Even among 7th level treasures, it is extremely powerful. It is enough to exchange for this piece of dragon crystal. Headstone, if you are sure you want to change it, I will accept this piece of saint crystal. The old man's faint voice sounded in the stone garden, and everyone looked at Jason extremely nervously. Change it naturally. Without saying a word, Jason directly handed the holy crystal in his hand to the old man's hand, and then moved the dragon head stone over. Although this dragon head stone is not big, it is extremely heavy, like a piece of fine iron, giving people an extremely heavy feeling. Although to Jason, the weight of thousands of kilograms is nothing at all, but that the solid feeling still shocked Jason. Just as Jason was moving the dragon head stone, countless people in the stone garden looked at Jason in astonishment, their faces dull. At the beginning, they only had a few thoughts in their minds about exchanging 7th level treasures for crystal ores in the Supreme Stone Garden on the 10th floor, and did not have a particularly clear concept. But when Jason actually took out the holy crystal, many people present were stunned. They asked themselves that there was no way they could do it as naturally as Jason. This is a holy crystal the size of a human head. Even for an 8th level or even 9th level expert, it has a certain effect, but it is used to exchange for crystal ore that may not be able to unlock things. Once this piece of dragon, there is nothing in the first stone, so this piece of holy crystal is completely wasted. At the thought of this possibility, many people shook their heads. Using such an extremely precious holy crystal to exchange for a future that may not be successful is such a gamble that many people wonder if they can't do it. In the crowd, Leo Rio and others were completely dumbfounded. This piece of saint crystal was solved by him before. It should have belonged to him, but now it was exchanged by Jason for some dragon head stone. The feeling in his heart depressed, one can imagine. In front of the crowd, Jason moved the dragon's head stone to the place where the stone was cut, and at the same time borrowed a stone-cutting knife from the stone-cutting master on the side. Everyone present was puzzled. In the last scene when he was unraveling the snow spar in the 9th floor stone garden, the stone untangling knife Jason used was the black heavy sword he carried on his back. But this time, Jason used the black heavy sword. The sword was stored in the space ring, and an ordinary calcite knife was used. Jason was holding the stone knife in his hand, his eyes were like lightning, a faint spiritual power seeped into the pale golden stone knife, and the stars were dotted, mysterious and unpredictable. Suddenly, Jason's hand moved, like a golden meteor that cut through the void and landed on the dragon's beard. The pale golden stone knife passed by, and the crimson dragon's beard was cut down. During the shock, it instantly turned into a piece of stone powder, with nothing inside. Crack! The sound continued, and Jason kept dropping the knife. His expression was solemn, his eyes were sharp, and he exuded a touch of spiritual power. The pale golden calcite knife in his hand seemed to turn into a golden full moon, exuding dots of divine light kept streaking across the dragon's head. Pieces of crimson stones fell down in response, including dragon whiskers, dragon horns, dragon temples, dragon eyes, dragon scales. The rocks were like flowers, flying down piece by piece, falling to the ground with a squeaking sound, and the huge dragon head was cut into 3 pieces. Once in a while, the ground was covered with a thick layer of stone powder. At this moment, the silence reached the extreme. No one dared to disturb. They were all looking at Jason in the solution stone. They didn't even dare to take a breath. Time passed bit by bit, and fine beads of sweat oozed out from Jason's forehead, and his movements became slower and slower. Every time the knife fell, he had to think for a long time, as if he was facing a huge problem. Suddenly ding! A crisp sound, like a dragon's roar, resounded throughout the entire supreme stone garden. Inexplicable pressure instantly enveloped the entire stone garden, and a fiery red, mysterious aura rushed from all directions like lightning. Spread out from the open mouth. This was an extremely magnificent red light, like the sunset, which illuminated the entire stone garden. The powerful and terrifying spiritual power made everyone present retreat violently, even the 8th level Emperor spiritual masters. In front of this power, I also felt extremely small. What is this? Everyone was shocked, their eyes suddenly widened, their expressions were dull, and they spoke in shock. In the midst of a sensation, in the eyes of everyone, a fiery red air flow rose into the sky, forming a red mist over the stone garden. A faint coercion came overwhelming, oppressing everyone. On the body, it is unbearable. What kind of spiritual power is this, and why is there such a terrifying pressure? It's too scary. Just this trace of mist, why can't I think of any resistance? What's in this dragon head stone? Is it possible? Is it some kind of terrifying existence? Everyone's face was pale, and young people like Koluan almost fell to the ground. The pressure was so terrifying that they suddenly rushed to the ground. It's enough to break one's heart. Behind Jason, Sri Lanka, Temujin and others also stayed away from each other, feeling that they could hardly breathe. The old man guarding the 10th floor of the stone garden has a solemn face. His body exudes a faint yellow halo. His eyes are like a spiritual lamp, emitting a dazzling light. The spiritual power in his body flows rapidly. If anything happens, if there is any movement, there is a possibility of taking action at any time. Eli, his feet slowly walked towards the dragon's head stone. The look in his eyes was like looking at an extremely beloved thing, and his body trembled slightly, unable to help himself. Everyone was running the spiritual power in their bodies to resist this pressure. At the same time, they focused their gazes and stared at the remaining 1/3 of the dragon head stone in front of Jason. For a moment, they wanted to take a look. What exactly is there in this dragon head stone? A memeing red mist covered the gap, making it difficult to see clearly. In front of the dragon head stone, Jason looked solemn, and his face was reflected red. This is an extremely pure fire energy. Standing in front of the dragon head stone, he is the one who has endured the greatest pressure among all people. His eyes are like lightning. Amid everyone's expectations, the solution in his hand, the stone knife, fell again. Whoa! The light golden light cut through the sky and landed gently on the dragon's head stone. Amidst the crisp sound of the stone shattering, a line of fiery red gas rose into the sky. The thundering dragon resounded in the stone garden, and the powerful fire spiritual power spread out. In front of the dragon head stone, Jason's face was solemn, and his body retreated violently. In his perception, the 3 bodies in his body were a trace of the original power of the 9th level Saint level immortal fire phoenix brought by the 1st level spiritual ring. In front of this fire energy, seemed to be filled with incomparable fear, and huddled in the corner of Jason's meridian. What rushed out? It seems to be some kind of spiritual energy. This kind of terrifying pressure is the power of the dragon. Oh my god, is there actually a dragon seed in this dragon head stone? Everyone was surprised. They all turned pale and retreated violently. This pressure was really too powerful. Even the 8th level Emperor spiritual master was unable to resist in front of him. Even the man who guarded the 10th level was unable to resist. The old man and Xiuan also involuntarily took 2 steps back. Streams of fiery red air circulated in the sky, and finally condensed into a flaming red dragon that was only 2 meters long. It stared at everyone in the entire stone garden, and terrifying coercion emanated from it. Comes oppression. What is this? Is it a dragon? No, it is Dragon Beards, a real dragon. This is a real dragon, the legendary real dragon that surpasses the 9th level holy dragon. We must not let this real dragon fly away. Seeing this real dragon, the entire stone garden was boiling. Everyone was crowding forward with fiery eyes. On the Stern continent, the so-called dragon creatures are generally reptile spirit beasts with huge bodies and huge wings. Once a real dragon grows into a complete body, it will be at least an 8th order emperor-level spirit. Beasts, most of them are 9th order holy-level spiritual beasts, which are extremely terrifying. But above the giant dragon, it is said that there is a real dragon, with a snake-like body, sharp claws, and sky-high dragon horns. This kind of spiritual beast is called a true dragon. According to records, a true dragon is a creature that surpasses the 9th level holy dragon. It only exists in legends. Even in ancient times, no one has ever seen it. I have seen it before, but now, it appears clearly in front of everyone. Roar, the fire-type true dragon let out a roar, and all the fire-type spiritual elements in the entire stone garden instantly went berserk. Everyone's faces were pale, their hearts felt suppressed and uncomfortable, and their figures retreated violently. Everyone, move away. This is just a dragon energy, not a real dragon, but if it really breaks out, it will be enough to hurt anyone here. The guardian of Xiuan waved his hand, and a khaki light quickly came out. Covering the entire stone garden, he spoke calmly. Hey, it seems to be an energy body without a real body. It is really just condensed dragon energy, the dragon energy of a fire-type true dragon. If a fire-type spiritual master can get it, it will be supreme. Ultimate treasure. This unique dragon power and energy are not possessed by even 9th level spiritual beasts. Once tempered, the effect will be extremely unparalleled. After some strong 8th level emperor spiritual masters felt it carefully, they shook their mouths and made a sound, but their expressions became even more fiery. But no one dared to take action, not to mention that this fire-type true dragon energy was unlocked by Jason. Although the dragon energy itself was not formed, the energy contained in it was comparable to that of a once the energy contained in the 9th level spiritual crystal explodes, no one present will be safe. It feels so familiar. Suddenly, a charming and subtle voice sounded in the stone garden. Under everyone's frightened eyes, Claire beside Jason, with a dull look on her face, slowly approached fiery red. Says true dragon. Claire, be careful. Seeing this scene, Jason's face changed greatly, and he exclaimed in surprise. Although this true dragon is only made of condensed spiritual energy, countless years of gestation have given it a hint of spiritual wisdom. Even the 8th level peak Imperial Spiritual Master is wary of such a terrifying fire-type true dragon. A 6th level high-level spiritual master like Claire will instantly turn into a dragon once it is angered by this dragon energy. Pile of ashes. However, Claire seemed to turn a deaf ear and still walked towards the fire dragon. Everyone present was completely surprised by Claire's boldness, and some people were even more surprised to find that Shi Yuan was surrounded by this fire-type true dragon. Even the 8th level Emperor Spiritual Master felt extremely oppressed, but Claire, who was the 6th level Senior Spiritual Master, seemed not to feel it at all. In the blink of an eye, Claire has arrived in front of the real fire dragon. Her brows are furrowed and there is a trace of doubt in her eyes, as if she sees something very familiar, but no matter what she thinks, can't think of anything ordinary. In the stone garden, the true fire dragon was also looking at Claire, the flames on its body were beating, and it was extremely beautiful. Claire, come back quickly, Jason said with anxiety on his face. However, at this moment, Claire seemed to be in some weird state, unable to feel it at all. Instead, she slowly stretched out her right hand. The fire dragon trembled all over, and then roar sounded in the hall. The flame dragon's mouth quietly opened, and with a swish, it instantly turned into a fiery red light, rushing towards Claire. No, Jason's eyes widened and he uttered a horrified voice. His body suddenly moved and turned into an afterimage and rushed towards Claire quickly. Master, Jason, Brother Shao, you don't want your life. Fusion Saint, Dini Shah and others exclaimed, and everyone present was extremely changed. However, the speed of the fire-type true dragon was too fast. Before Jason could rush to Claire's side, the fire-type true dragon had already arrived in front of Claire, its body glowing with red light, and it turned into the red pill instantly disappeared into Claire's eyebrows. Rumble, the terrifying fire spiritual power spread out, Jason's flying body jerked for a while, and then was heavily ejected. Not good. Everyone in the stone garden was shocked. The earthy yellow barrier released by the guarding old man was constantly trembling. Under this terrifying spiritual power, it might break at any time. Everyone, help, suppress it together. The old man's eyes suddenly burst into light, and his hands continued to exude khaki-colored spiritual power, and he shouted loudly. Buzz, 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 buzz. Colorful spiritual power barriers of various colors were released, surrounding the stone garden layer by layer. Jason managed to stabilize his body and looked towards the center of the stone garden. However, when he looked at it, he suddenly froze. In the stone garden, Claire was floating in the sky, her eyes were closed tightly, and her whole body was wrapped in a fiery red soft light. Terrifying spiritual power was constantly emanating from her body, and her face was originally quite revealing. The terrifying red spots, at this moment, slowly faded and disappeared. After the red spot completely disappeared, a huge wave of spiritual power suddenly impacted from the surface of Claire's body. This wave of spiritual power was like a wolf smoke, rising into the sky and breaking through instantly. The spiritual energy barrier released by everyone present rushed into the sky. At the same time, all the spiritual elements in the world around the Holy King gambling crystal square instantly became violent and swarmed towards Claire's body. At this moment, waves of overwhelming spiritual power surged like waves of Langchao, spreading out in all directions with Claire's body as the center. The entire stone garden was filled with violent fire spiritual elements. The fire spiritual elements within a radius of 100 meters formed a huge whirlpool and rushed towards Claire in the center of the whirlpool. They were then absorbed into her body. This Claire is actually advancing. In the stone garden, all the strong men looked at this scene in surprise, with extremely shocked light on their faces. Countless strands of terrifying fire spiritual power continued to seep into Claire's body. Everyone present felt that the power in Claire's body was constantly rising. In an instant, she broke through the 6th-level high-level master. The critical point that a spiritual master can reach has reached the level of a 7th-level low-level imperial spiritual master. Countless fiery red rays of light shone in this stone garden, rendering the entire 10th floor of the Supreme Stone Garden colorful. The violent fire spiritual elements swarmed into Claire's body desperately, because the spiritual power was absorbed too much. Quickly, a vacuum of spiritual power was formed around Claire. In the stone garden, Jason and others were stunned. When the fire dragon rushed towards Claire, Jason was filled with worry, but what happened to Claire now completely shattered his cognition. According to the previous situation, the fire-type true dragon was obviously the spiritual energy formed by the dragon head stone cultivated for countless years. Because of the long time, it even produced a trace of spiritual wisdom. Although this kind of true energy is pure and powerful, it cannot be directly absorbed by the spiritual master. It must be wiped out spiritually and completely transformed into the most original fire spiritual element before it can be absorbed by the spiritual master. Especially the fire-type true dragon spiritual energy previously was too powerful and terrifying. Even an 8th-level senior emperor spiritual master who wanted to absorb it directly would probably be instantly stunned by this powerful spiritual energy. It was so overwhelming, let alone Claire, a 6th-level senior spiritual master. Even if there is a trace of fire dragon chi separated from it, the energy contained in it should be enough to make her explode and die. But now, she has absorbed an entire fire dragon chi, but she is still absorbing the energy in the air. The fire spiritual element is really difficult to understand. Not only Jason, but also the strong men in the stone garden had their eyes widened and their mouths opened so wide that they could almost fit a penis in. In the stone garden, the spiritual power in Claire's body continued to soar after she was promoted to the 7th-level low-level imperial spiritual master. It stopped until it almost broke through the critical point of the 7th level intermediate imperial spiritual master. The endless fire spiritual power gradually dissipated in the air, and everything around them returned to calm, but everyone's hearts were still immersed in the previous shock. In the sky, Claire's eyes that were previously suspended suddenly opened, revealing a pair of golden pupils, and then her whole body slowly landed on the ground. During the landing, her pupils it turned into light silver. Claire, Jason rushed forward and supported her. Master, Claire's eyes were blurry, as if she had woken up from a dream. She made a sweet sound in her mouth, then tilted her head and fell asleep directly. Jason was startled, and his spiritual consciousness quickly entered Claire's body. He felt it carefully before letting out a long breath. Claire's body is filled with strong 7th level low-level fire spiritual power. Her body is extremely healthy and does not have any injuries. The reason why she is unconscious is just because the previous impact of spiritual power was too powerful, making her all the energy in her body has been used up. She just needs to take good care of herself and she will be able to return to normal when she wakes up. Let's go. In the stone garden, Jason picked up the unconscious Claire and immediately walked towards the outskirts of the 10th floor stone garden. The unexpected situation that happened to Claire also completely eliminated Jason's interest in viewing the supreme stone garden on the 10th floor of the Holy King's gambling crystal square. In fact, with Jason's current strength, he still can't see too clearly the crystal or in the 10th level stone garden. The previous dragon head stone was just because of the strangeness on the black épée and the presence of clay. The feeling you mentioned was what made Jason decide to exchange. For Jason, although the head-sized saint crystal is precious, it is nothing. The reason why the saint crystal is precious is because the spiritual power elements contained in it are extremely pure and soft, and can be directly absorbed by the spiritual master. When a lot of energy is consumed, the strength should be restored as soon as possible, but with Jason's attainments in elixir science, he is completely able to prepare elixirs that can instantly restore the spiritual power in a spiritual master's body. If the holy crystal is replaced by another 7th level treasure, especially a 7th level elixir, Jason may not necessarily exchange it for the dragon head stone. After seeing that Jason was about to leave, everyone present gathered around him. Little friend Jason, our Moore family has booked a banquet at Baoling Restaurant. I hope you will come. Little brother, I am the shopkeeper of Lingbao Pavilion in Lingdo City. If you want the 5 elements Dao fruit, you can come to our Lingbao Pavilion to auction it. Our Lingbao Pavilion will not charge any auction fees. Little friend Jason, if you want to auction your 5 elements Dao fruit, please inform me as soon as possible. Jason, many people warmly invited Jason, with expectations on their faces. Jason's performance today is really amazing. He solved the stone 3 times, and each time he solved the treasure. Especially in the 10th floor of the Supreme Stone Garden, he solved the stone condensed by dragon energy, which produced the mini fire dragon with a hint of intelligence shocked everyone present. If we could make friends with such a crystal master, it would only be good for a big family like them, without any harm. At the same time, there are still some people who are still obsessed with the 5 elements Dao fruit that Jason solved. Their expressions were fiery and enthusiastic, and even Sri Lanka and the others were trapped and unable to escape. Everyone, I'm really sorry. We still have something to do, so please get out of the way. Jason said softly. The powerful people who can come here are all members of various big families in Lingdo City. If ordinary people were invited by such an invitation, they would be excited and confused. However, Jason directly refused. Mingdao wanted to leave Lingdo City and go to the spiritual medicine master tower. Jinda's coming to the Holy King's crystal gambling square to gamble for crystals was just an unexpected move. What happened to Claire also made him full of doubts. Any interest? Little friend Jason, I am willing to exchange a bottle of 7th level Imperial elixir for your 5 elements Dao fruit. Please consider it carefully. Little brother, are you really not selling your 5 elements Dao fruit? If the little brother needs it, he can keep a few Dao fruits that match his own attributes, and the rest can be auctioned. Yeah, that's right, I don't think little brother Jason can use it alone. All 5 of the 5 elements Dao fruits, right? These 5 elements Dao fruits are obtained from the crystal ore of our Holy King Gambling Crystal House, and our Saint King Gambling Crystal House is willing to pay a lot of money to purchase them. A group of strong men surrounded Jason and others. They were all extremely enthusiastic and wanted to persuade Jason to sell the 5 elements fruit. Among them, several strong men were extremely determined and seemed to want to do so at any cost. Seeing that he was surrounded and unable to move even an inch, Jason frowned in the crowd and said, "Everyone, I think I have already said that these 5 elements Dao fruits have their own uses and are not for sale. Please give me away." As soon as these words came out, the scene fell into dead silence, and then the cold murderous intent spread, no less than a dozen strands, locked on Jason, and it was unknown where it came from. "Little brother, don't be too greedy." A voice sounded in the crowd, and I didn't know who it came from. The voice was cold. Jason frowned and said, "I extracted the 5 elements Dao fruit from the crystal ore. Whether it is auctioned or kept for my own use, it is just my business. It has nothing to do with greed, right? Look." Seeing Jason's determined expression, the crowd stirred slightly, and then slowly moved out of the way. Jason hugged Claire and floated away with Melting Saint and others. "Humph, you ignorant guy." An old man looked at the backs of Jason and others and snorted coldly, "Even if you enter the Twin Towers, you may not be able to keep this magic medicine." After that, the old man walked away. In the Supreme Stone Garden on the 10th floor, many powerful men had cold expressions on their faces, and then left the Holy King's Gambling Crystal Square and walked straight towards the location of their families. Many of them were members of major families in Lingdo City. Seeing that they could not purchase the 5 elements fruit directly from Jason, they wanted to put some pressure on Jason through other channels. The inner city of Lingdo City, outside the Twin Towers Administrative Center, and the residential area where everyone lives in the northwest. Jason and his group walked into the residential area. "Jason, where have you been? What happened to Claire?" When Jason and the others returned to the living area, Renaud happened to walk out of his room and saw the unconscious Claire held by Jason, with a hint of surprise on his face. "Eh?" Immediately, there was a trace of doubt on his face, and he said, "When did the spiritual power contained in Claire's body become so powerful? She should have been promoted to the 7th level Imperial Spiritual Master, right? When did it happen? Something?" In the hall, Jason smiled bitterly and told his father everything that had happened before. Renaud came to Jason and others in a few steps, and felt Claire's body carefully with his spiritual sense, and then said, "It's okay, Claire just endured too much spiritual power in a short period of time. The energy was exhausted, so I fell into a coma. I can recover after taking good care of myself." Jason nodded and said, "For safety reasons, Father, I want to check up on Claire to avoid leaving her in the future." "What kind of sequelae?" "Well, it is necessary, you go ahead, I will find you again at night." After saying goodbye to Melting Saint and others, Jason put Claire on the bed in her room, and then spiritually carefully began to examine Claire's body. His spiritual consciousness was like thin threads, constantly seeping into Claire's body, carefully observing every part of Claire's structure. Claire has always shown great differences, and Jason felt that there must be something unknown about Claire. In terms of recovery ability, Claire can even compare to Jason, who was treated by the Black Strange Power. In terms of cultivation talent, it is even more horrifying. In 3 years, she has been promoted from nothing to a 7th level low-level Imperial Spiritual Master. The cultivation speed is even faster than that of Loken, a wood spirit body that is extremely powerful on the mainland. Before, in the Supreme Stone Garden, even Jason himself would have exploded and died if he was exposed to the terrifying fire dragon energy. However, Claire was completely fine. Instead, she directly absorbed it and advanced to the 7th level. Such a strange situation for a low-level Imperial Spirit Master made Jason's curiosity even deeper. However, no matter how Jason perceived it, there was nothing strange about Claire's body. It was exactly the same as that of ordinary people. Then, Jason thought of the red spots on Claire's face and her silver eyes. When he saw Claire for the first time, he felt that there was something unique about Claire. It was her power that chose her, and the red spot on her face was what Jason was curious about. Thinking of this, Jason immediately stepped forward, lowered his head, and carefully observed the location of the red spots on Claire's face. What appeared in front of Jason was an extremely smooth and white face that could be broken by a blow, like a freshly cooked and peeled egg, so juicy and smooth that people couldn't help but want to take a bite. This was a flawless face. Jason had never thought that Claire would be so attractive once the red spots on her face disappeared. Jason then remembered that in the Supreme Stone Garden, after Claire was promoted to the 7th level low-level Emperor Spirit Master, the red spots on her face completely faded and disappeared, and did not appear again. However, Jason did not give up. He lowered his head and carefully observed Claire's face where the red spots were. At the same time, his spiritual consciousness penetrated into Claire's skin bit by bit. Everything is extremely normal, no different from ordinary people's skin. Jason's brows frowned deeply. He, a 9th level elixir master in his previous life, could not discover the problem with Claire, which made him feel incredible. Is it because of the bloodline? Jason murmured. There are generally only 2 reasons for a situation like Claire's. One is the body itself, and the other is a bloodline problem. Just like Prince Tyuria and himself, Jason believed that even if an 8th level elixir emperor came to examine him, he would never be able to detect the strange black power in his body and his unique bloodline. Bloodline is a hidden thing. Unless Jason's strength recovers from his previous achievements, it is impossible to observe a person's hidden potential bloodline. Special methods must be used to check it. Just like Jason now, he clearly knows that he is a member of the Todd family and has the blood of the Todd family. At the same time, Jason is comparable to an 8th level spiritual medicine emperor in terms of technical magic medicine. But if he wanted to detect the blood concentration in his body, he would have to use the family's blood needle. He would not be able to figure it out by any other method. Just when Jason was staring at Claire's face and thinking, he didn't even notice that Claire's eyelids moved slightly, and then she sat up suddenly. Boo! In the room, Jason and Claire's mouths collided in an instant. The 2 people, who had no idea what was happening, were stunned. Jason's face suddenly turned red. He didn't expect this situation at all. His heart jumped like a deer, and then he subconsciously stuck out his tongue and licked it quickly. And an extremely cool and sweet smell was instantly introduced into Jason's mind. Their frozen bodies seemed to be electrocuted, and they both trembled violently, and then quickly separated. Claire's lips were very thin, extremely warm, and full of sweetness, which made Jason so happy that he couldn't bear to leave. The 2 of them looked at each other face to face, their hearts beating wildly, and they didn't know what to say. Looking at Claire's red lips, when Jason thought of the sweet and warm feeling before, he unexpectedly stuck out his tongue again and licked his lips, his expression full of aftertaste. Master. On the bed, Claire's face suddenly turned red, and even her ears were pink. She looked shy and didn't dare to look at Jason, so she almost found a hole in the ground and crawled down. Claire, are you okay? Jason said awkwardly, just now while I was checking your body. As soon as he said these words, Claire's face suddenly changed. He turned redder and whispered, Master, no, I mean. Jason panicked all of a sudden. What he said before was so ambiguous that it made him feel uncomfortable. One has to imagine. What I mean is to check your body, to see if there is anything wrong. It's not what you understand. Oh no. Jason was completely speechless. He didn't even know what to say. The more he spoke, the more mistakes he made. In his previous life, he was a 9th level elixir saint master and was known as the #1 person in the mainland. However, he was thorough in this regard. After all, he was a newcomer. He was completely panicked. He could only keep his mouth shut and stared at Claire blankly. At least he didn't speak and he wouldn't say anything wrong. If he continued to speak, Jason didn't know what he would say. What kind of words? Come. Master, I know what you mean. In fact, you don't need to explain. Claire lowered her head and spoke in an extremely soft voice, pretending to be calm. However, her hands were holding the sheets and rubbing them constantly, and she was not as calm as she appeared on the surface. Ahem. Jason felt sweat dripping from his forehead, and when he wiped it with his hand, it suddenly became wet. This feeling made Jason, who had an extremely strong heart and was extremely calm when encountering any difficulties, feel extremely uncomfortable. What, Claire, how do you feel now? Jason looked around before finally speaking. Master, I'm fine. Claire whispered. Yeah, it's fine. Then you have a good rest. I have something else to do, so I'll go out first. Jason finished his words quickly, and then walked out of the room without waiting for Claire's reaction, and closed the door. After closing the door, Jason let out a long breath. His palms were already soaked in sweat and damp. At the door of the room, Jason couldn't help but reveal a wry smile on his face. Before, he wanted to wait for Claire to wake up and ask her what happened in the stone garden. What happened, but he did it in a hurry, completely forgotten. Forget it, let's ask next time. Jason smiled bitterly. But, to be honest, that feeling before seemed pretty good. Thinking of the feeling he had with Claire before, Jason said this out of nowhere, and then looked back furtively. After taking a quick look, he realized that no one was there, and then he quickly left Claire's room. However, what Jason didn't see was that after he left, Claire sat blankly on the bed with a peaceful expression. After a while, a faint voice came from the room. Master, that was Claire's first kiss earlier. Claire murmured, and a smile quietly bloomed on her face, like a blooming epiphyllum, extremely beautiful. Late at night, the residential areas where the major forces are located are all brightly lit. Today's university is the last of the 3 universities that the Twin Towers give all players rest time. Everyone knows that starting from Mingda, all the talents selected by the Twin Towers will enter the Twin Towers to practice. Once they go, I don't know how long it will take for them to not see each other. Although entering the Twin Towers is something that countless people would envy and be happy about, at this time, it really makes people unhappy. Each force held a large banquet to allow the players to communicate with each other. Starting from Mingda University, the leaders of the major forces also left Lingdo City and went to their respective forces. In the residential area where the Northwest is located, it is also brightly lit and bustling. Denisa, after entering the elixir tower, you must take good care of yourself. In the corner of the hall, Xuanfeng told Denisa with a loving look on his face. Yes, Grandpa, Denisha will definitely work hard to practice, live up to Grandpa's expectations, and spread the reputation of our Lubinar kingdom throughout the entire continent. Denisha said firmly, with a look full of confidence. Silly boy. Xuanfeng shook his head and shouted. In another corner, Tuale, the #1 master of the Shihuang tribe, was also carefully admonishing Temujin. And when we get there are many strong people. They are all elites on the mainland. Their strength is extraordinary. You can't lose confidence, but you must not be competitive if you have any questions. Just talk to Jiasen, discussed, as well as Denisha and Claire, you are all from the Northwest and are members of the Northwest. You should unite with each other. Of course, I believe I don't need to say more about this inside, you must take good care of yourself, and you must remember that you are not only my disciple of Tuale, but also the hope of thousands of people of our Shihuang tribe. In the past hundreds of years, no one in our Shihuang tribe has been able to enter Twin Towers cultivation. This is an opportunity, I hope you will seize it. Tuale spoke earnestly, while Temujin stood aside and listened quietly. In another corner of the hall, Renault was also standing with Jason. Renault looked at Jason lovingly. It will probably take a while before we enter the Twin Towers this time. We, father and son, probably won't be able to see each other for a while. Father. Jason sat down. It didn't feel right in my heart. Based on these general understandings, Jason also knew that the Twin Towers were like an academy, and the talents selected into it were like students. They must be successful in their studies, or perhaps complete all their studies. After that, you can graduate and leave the Twin Towers, which usually takes 3 to 5 years. For some strong people, 3 to 5 years may not be anything at all, but for Jason, who has only traveled to this world for a total of 5 years, it is an extremely long time. But as a 9th level elixir master in his previous life, Jason, a determined man, knew exactly what he needed. If he wanted to become a 10th level medicine god in this life, he would have to learn a lot of things. This was simply impossible. Avoid it, and the spiritual medicine master tower is the place that can bring him this help. Don't worry, father, I will complete my studies as soon as possible. Don't forget, we still have a 10-year agreement with the Dawes family. Jason calmed down and smiled with a smile on his face. Yes. Renault nodded. Yes, we still have a 10-year agreement with the Dawes family. After you leave Mingda, I will return to the territory of chaos. Where can I maximize my strength? Improvement. In the metal space set up by the god-killing Nadim in the cloud and mist swamp in the territory of chaos, Renault's training speed was almost 10 times that of the outside world. It only took Renault 1 year to complete his training from 7 to 7. The first level senior imperial spiritual master crossed a level and became the 8th level low-level emperor spiritual master. Now it has been more than a year since Renault left the territory of chaos. Although his strength has also improved, he is still the same as in the territory of chaos. In comparison, it is much slower. As for what you should do inside the alchemist tower after you enter, Renault looked at Jason and said calmly, I think you have your own way of doing things, and there is no need for me to remind you. For Jason, Renault felt extremely reassured. Sometimes, he felt that Jason's sophistication in dealing with things even surpassed his own father, and Renault also had absolute confidence in Jason's strength. Just when Jason and other members who had joined the elixir were receiving instructions from their elders, a figure walked in from the lobby of the northwest residential area. Master what? Seeing this man, everyone in the northwest stood up immediately, and then greeted him enthusiastically. It was the guardian what of the spirit medicine master tower. Haha, everyone, I hope my arrival will not disturb you. What laughed loudly? Where? Everyone laughed. Continue everyone, I am here today mainly to find Jason and Sri Lanka. Looking for me? Jason couldn't help but reveal a trace of doubt in his heart, and Sri Lanka was completely stunned. He was only a 6th level intermediate, the spiritual master, this time, did not enter the top 100 in the mainland elite competition, and did not even have the opportunity to join the Twin Towers. What would Master What have to do with him? Jason, I heard that this afternoon you unlocked an 8th level elixir at the Holy King's gambling crystal shop in Lingdo City. The 5 elements Dao fruit has disappeared on the mainland for tens of thousands of years. As soon as What spoke, Jason knew What's intention. Yes, Master What, is there any problem? Haha, of course there is no problem. I am here this time just to ask on behalf of the Elixir Master Tower. I wonder if you are willing to sell this 5 elements Dao fruit to us. Spiritual Medicine Master Tower, whether you need spiritual coins, spiritual medicine, or elixir, our Spiritual Medicine Master Tower will never treat you badly in terms of price. What looked at Jason with bright eyes, waiting for his answer. Jason's brows immediately wrinkled and he said, Master What, I have my own use for this 5 elements Dao fruit, so I'm afraid I can't sell it to your elixir tower. Jason never expected that it would take just a few short seconds. Within an hour, even the Spiritual Medicine Master Tower was eyeing the 5 elements Dao fruit in his hand, which made him feel a little unhappy. Haha, Jason, you misunderstood. Seeing Jason's displeased expression, Master What burst out laughing and said, "Jason, I'm just asking for your wishes on behalf of the Alchemist Tower. Our spiritual medicine master tower will not force any member to do anything they don't want to do. If you don't want to sell it, just keep it for yourself. Our spiritual medicine master tower will never ask for this from you in any way, don't worry." Jason smiled and said, "This 5 elements Tao fruit is really useful to me, I'm sorry. As long as the other party doesn't force him to hand over the 5 elements Tao fruit, everything will be easy to handle." Although Jason really hopes to become a member of the Alchemist Tower and learn there, if the other party forces him to do so because of his joining the Alchemist Tower, Jason has already made up his mind before and would rather not join the Alchemist Tower. Ta will not hand over the 5 elements fruit to the other party. Haha, I understand. As a multi-system spiritual master, it will be extremely difficult for you to attack the 7th level low-level Imperial Spiritual Master normally. With these 5 elements Tao fruit, I believe it will be of great help to you. What nodded, and then finally reminded, of course, this 5 elements Tao fruit belongs to the 8th level elixir. If you are not sure about it yourself, you can pay a certain price to ask the master in our elixir master tower to prepare it. Success, I think the efficiency will be a little higher than when you prepare it yourself. In What's mind, although he admired Jason's attainments in elixirs, Jason was only a 6th level senior spiritual master after all. In terms of the preparation of elixirs, he was different from those who, compared with the 7th level elixir master, there are still many gaps. Looking at What's sincere eyes, Jason also saw that What was really doing it for his own good. He immediately nodded and said, "If I need to hand it over to someone else to prepare it, I will definitely consider it." What nodded, but as an 8th level Emperor spiritual master, he could tell at a glance that Jason was just talking casually, and he couldn't help but sigh in his heart, but he was just an outsider, and the 5 elements Tao fruit was Jason's own after all. At this point, it was hard for him to say anything more. What never expected was that Jason in front of him, if he really prepared the elixir, would be comparable to an 8th level elixir master. Even if all the elixir masters in their entire elixir master tower gathered together, there may not be a more powerful elixir master than Jason. Since you don't want to sell this 5 elements Tao fruit, now that you are already a member of our spiritual medicine master tower, you don't have to worry about other forces taking it from you. Our spiritual medicine master tower will never let such a thing happen. Don't worry about this. What said solemnly again. Jason nodded, he understood what said. It seems that some powerful forces in Spirit Do City explained the reasons to the Spirit Medicine Tower, and wanted the Spirit Medicine Tower to put pressure on Jason, but they were rejected by the Spirit Medicine Tower. By the way, I am here tonight. The 5 elements Tao fruit is one thing. The other thing is to invite Sri Lanka in the northwest to join our spiritual pharmacist tower. However, if he joins our spiritual pharmacist tower, you can start from the peripheral disciples. What said while looking at Sri Lanka. What? Invite me to join the medicine master tower? On the side, Sri Lanka was stunned when he heard this. In the hall, Sri Lanka's body trembled suddenly as if he was electrocuted, and then his face showed an extremely excited look. Master What, are you saying that I can join the Alchemist Tower? Sri Lanka's eyes were excited and he spoke in disbelief. On the side, other team leaders and players from the northwest were stunned on the spot after hearing the conversation. In this mainland elite competition, the only players who can enter the Twin Towers are Jason, Temujin, Dinisha, and Claire. Many players from other forces are 6th level advanced spiritual masters. However, because they were not among the top 100 in the competition, they could not join the Twin Towers. But now, Master What has come specifically to invite Sri Lanka to join, which shocked many people. For these small forces in the northwest of the continent, joining the Twin Towers is an extremely glorious thing, and the help to a force is also beyond imagination. It can be said that none of the players present does not want to join the Medicine Master Tower. This is almost their dream. Yes. Looking at Sri Lanka's extremely hopeful eyes, Master Wat said with a smile on his face, "About you, I have already told Elder Kevlin. In view of your attainments in spiritual medicine, our spiritual medicine master tower decided to invite you to enter. If you are willing, you will be a member of our elixir tower from now on. Mingda, you can go to the elixir tower with Jason and the others, but compared with Jason and the others, we can start from the outermost disciples." After Master Wat finished speaking, all the players around him looked at Sri Lanka with extremely envious eyes, and Leo, the leader of the team from the Kingdom of Weiss in the northwest, was even more excited. Trembling, unable to control himself, with those fiery eyes, he wished he could rush forward and agree for Sri Lanka. "Yes, I do." Sri Lanka nodded eagerly, with an excited expression. "I am willing to join the Spiritual Medicine Master Tower and become a member of the Spiritual Medicine Master Tower." "That's good." Wat nodded, very pleased with Sri Lanka's answer. Obviously, they have been prepared for it for a long time. In fact, except for Clark and Kerberos this time, no player in the previous elite competitions on the mainland has refused the invitation of the Twin Towers. "You will set off with our team tomorrow morning. Don't forget it then." In the hall, Wat stood up and patted Sri Lanka on the shoulder, and then said to the many team leaders present, "Then we won't disturb your banquet. Please continue. I have to go back and report to Elder Coughlin." After Wat finished speaking, he said goodbye and left the banquet hall. Xuanfeng and others, he sent him to the entrance of the hall and waited until his back disappeared before returning to the hall. In the hall, Sri Lanka looked excited. At this moment, he still felt like he was in a fog. The rest of the players in the hall looked at Sri Lanka with envy, especially Leo, the team leader of the Kingdom of Weiss, who wanted to shout with joy. Although the Kingdom of Weiss is the first kingdom among the Northwest kingdoms, it is extremely weak when compared to the mainland. In the nearly 1,000 years of its founding history, no player has ever entered the Twin Towers. This time, originally, Okaso and Sri Lanka could not enter the Twin Towers due to their strength. Leo had already made a plan to lead Okaso and Sri Lanka back to Mingda, but Wat's previous additional invitation to Sri Lanka made him extremely excited. "Sri Lanka, congratulations!" "Haha, Sri Lanka, your luck is too good. We will enter the elixir tower together then." In the hall, all the players gathered around and congratulated Sri Lanka. With joy on his face, Sri Lanka returned greetings to everyone one by one, and then set his sights on Jason, who was not far away. With a serious look on his face, he took a step forward, came to Jason, and then bowed deeply to Jason. "Jason, thank you." His tone was sincere, his face full of gratitude, and he bowed to the end. Sri Lanka's move immediately stunned everyone present. Only Dini Shah and Master Benjamin had thoughtful eyes in their eyes. Originally, with the strength of Sri Lanka's 6th-level intermediate spiritual master, he was almost ranked at the bottom among the more than 1,000 players who came from all over the mainland to participate in the mainland elite competition. However, the reason why he was invited by Wat to join the Spiritual Medicine Master Tower, it is obvious that the Elixir Master Tower took a fancy to his potential in elixir medicine. The reason why Master Wat knows so much about Sri Lanka's achievements in elixirs is inseparable from Jason. During the journey from the northwest of the mainland to Lingdo City, Jason, Benjamin, and Wat often communicated about spiritual medicine. At first, when the three of them communicated, only Dini Shah was qualified to listen. At Jason's suggestion, Sri Lanka, who was still a 6th-level low-level spiritual master and a 5th-level intermediate elixir master, also had the qualification to listen on the side. In the past 6 months, Dini Shah and Sri Lanka have made rapid progress in spiritual medicine, and their horizons have expanded a lot. Sri Lanka has also advanced from a low-level spiritual master of the 6th level to an intermediate level of the 6th level. In terms of elixir medicine, he has also been promoted from the 5th-level intermediate elixir master to the 5th-level senior elixir master. This is what gave Wat a certain impression of Sri Lanka. At the same time, he had a certain appreciation for Sri Lanka, a talented person who was less than 30 years old and was promoted to the 5th level of senior elixir master. Finally, he had the experience just now. One scene. It can be said that the reason why Sri Lanka was able to enter the Alchemist Tower was closely related to Jason's help. If Jason had not invited Sri Lanka to observe the exchange between the three, Sri Lanka would not have been noticed by What at all, and would not have been invited to join. Alchemist Tower. Haha, thank me for nothing. If it weren't for your own strength, you wouldn't have joined the Elixir Master Tower. Jason smiled lightly. When the three of them were discussing, the reason why Jason called Sri Lanka in was not to let him join the Elixir Master Tower, but just to feel a little appreciation for his attainments in elixir science. Unexpectedly, now it gave him such an opportunity, something Jason never thought of at the time. Although Jason said this, Sri Lanka still completed such a great gift, and the surrounding audience also figured out the whole story at this moment, and started talking one after another. The banquet continued, and the noisy atmosphere became even more lively. For Northwest, this was undoubtedly an unforgettable night. Early on the second morning, under the shouts of the staff of the Alchemist Tower, Jason and other players who joined the Alchemist Tower all got up early and gathered in the administrative center hall of the Twin Towers. Here, all 100 players from the mainland elite competition gathered together, and then divided into two groups, each walking towards the north and south gates of Lingdo City. Although the Spiritual Master Tower and the Spiritual Medicine Master Tower are collectively called the Twin Towers and have an administrative center in Lingdo City, their real locations are scattered on the north and south sides of Lingdo City. Non-members of each of them cannot enter at all. The place. Along the way in the inner city of Lingdo City, the team leaders and other players from various forces looked eagerly at Jason and others who were passing by. Among the crowd, Jason saw his father, Reno, who stood there quietly, but from his eyes, Jason felt a strong emotion. Beside him, Lin was also standing there, looking at Jason and Claire with encouragement in his eyes. In a short time, Jason and others left the inner city and walked towards the south gate of Lingdo City. The Spiritual Medicine Master Tower was located in the south of Lingdo City. Along the way, after seeing Jason and others, all the people bowed and showed great respect to the people in the Alchemist Tower. In the center of this continent, the Twin Towers are everything here. For thousands of years, the peace here, and even the peace of the entire continent, has been closely related to the Twin Towers. They are full of love for the Twin Towers from deep in their hearts. Gratitude. Under the leadership of the staff, Jason and his team moved very quickly, and in a moment, they arrived outside the south gate of Lingdo City. However, what made Jason and the others curious was that there was no transportation at all outside the south gate. There were only two guardians of the Alchemist Tower waiting there, among them was Master What, whom Jason was familiar with. Very good, all 38 contestants are here. What glanced at everyone and nodded slightly. Among the top 100 people in this mainland elite competition, 38 people chose the Spiritual Medicine Master Tower, while 60 people chose the Spiritual Master Tower. After all, for spiritual masters like them, they think that joining the Spiritual Master Tower is beneficial to their own development. Strength may improve faster. Now that everyone is here, everyone should follow us. We are still thousands of kilometers away from the Spiritual Medicine Master Tower. However, my request is that no matter you are a 7th level Imperial Spiritualist or have the ability to fly, 6th level spiritual masters with spiritual skills are not allowed to fly and can only rely on their own bodies to walk to the Spiritual Medicine Master Tower. Protector Ryan, who was standing next to What, said indifferently. What? Walking? This after hearing Protector Ryan's words, all the players were stunned. What? Do you have any questions? Protector Ryan said indifferently. There was silence at the entire city gate, and no one made a sound. That's fine if there's no problem. Now, let's go. Without saying a word, Guardian Ruyan and what immediately turned into an afterimage and rushed towards the south of Lingdo City. Let's go. Many players looked at each other helplessly, and then followed Wat and Ryan, taking steps to catch up. At noon, the scorching sun caused the leaves to curl up. On both sides of the avenue, cicadas kept shouting at the top of their lungs, adding a layer of irritability to the sultry weather. On the avenue outside Lingdo City, silhouettes of people flashed by one after another, flying past like lightning, raising clouds of smoke and dust. The people who kept running on the road were Jason's group heading to the alchemist's tower. The ones running at the front were naturally Ryan and Wat. They were walking leisurely, their robes fluttering in the wind. Their steps were slightly forward, and they didn't look big. However, every step was like crossing the distance of space and always controlled the speed at an extremely alarming level. Half a day has passed since setting off from Lingdo City early in the morning. However, a group of players on the avenue each showed their own performance. Different styles. Following behind the two of them were naturally Leonardo and Sophia, who were 7th-level intermediate imperial spiritual masters. Their bodies were shining with spiritual power, and they flew quickly, following Wat closely. Behind him and Ruyan, their eyes were steady. What followed was a large group of runners who were running wildly. Some low-level 7th-level imperial spiritual masters were okay. Although they were panting, it was obvious that after flying so fast for half a day, they were still not there. Have not reached their limit, and the remaining 6th-level spiritual masters are completely miserable. Although Wat and Ryan are not running at full strength, their current speed has reached that of a 6th-level spiritual master. The running speed of a high-level spiritual master with all his strength is comparable to that of a 7th-level low-level imperial spiritual master. Although there is a huge gap between the 7th-level imperial spiritual master and the 6th-level spiritual master, there is also a huge dividing line between mid-level professionals and high-level professionals. In terms of instantaneous dodge speed, the 7th-level spiritual master has a huge gap. A low-level Imperial Spirit Master is far superior to an average 6th-level Senior Spirit Master. But in terms of running for a long time, the 7th-level low-level Imperial Spiritual Master is not much faster than the 6th-level high-level Imperial Spiritual Master. However, the 7th-level Imperial Spiritual Master has a huge advantage, that is, compared with the 6th-level Imperial Spiritual Master. For the Supreme Spiritual Masters, the spiritual power in their body is almost unlimited. As long as they continuously absorb spiritual power elements from the outside world while running and can integrate into nature, 7th-level Imperial Spiritual Masters do not have to worry about their body. The spiritual power will be exhausted. On the avenue, the 6th-level Spiritual Masters are all sweating, running hard, with flushed faces. It is obvious that they have reached a limit. The long running for half a day makes them, the spiritual energy in the body was almost exhausted, and some players with poor strength could hardly catch up with the team. But he still gritted his teeth and kept flying, not wanting to be left behind. However, Jason, who was only a 6th-level senior spiritual master, seemed extremely relaxed at the moment. He took big steps, and there was a look on his face. There was no sign of fatigue at all, and his expression was extremely calm. Not to mention Jason's body that was so powerful that it reached the peak of the 8th level, but the powerful spirit that filled all the meridians from the 1st to the 6th level in his body. Strength is enough to ensure his endless running. Moreover, the spiritual god technique practiced by Jason is also extremely powerful in restoring the spiritual power in the body. Just the spiritual power consumed by constant running is simply not comparable to the spiritual power he consumes. Naturally, there was no difficulty at all. In fact, if Jason ran with all his strength, he could even surpass Sophia and Leonardo. However, he ran slowly among the crowd without any intention of surpassing him. Beside Jason, the four of them, Rongsheng, Claire, Dinisha, and Temujin, also followed Jason closely and ran among the crowd. Seeing Jason's relaxed appearance, they were all present. All the players in the competition felt a little bit aggrieved about Jason winning the championship at first. But now, when they look at it, they know that Jason is indeed responsible for his amazing strength. Running so fast is the most challenging thing. The most important thing is the recovery speed of the spiritual power in the body. Even those 7th-level low-level imperial spiritual masters who can integrate with the spiritual elements of heaven and earth feel a little bit tired when they are constantly running. How could Jason, a 6th-level senior spiritual master, appear so relaxed? But at the back of the team is Sri Lanka. As a member specially invited by Wat to join the Spiritual Medicine Master Tower, Sri Lanka is a 6th-level intermediate spiritual master. Naturally, he is the weakest among everyone present. At this moment, his robes were soaked with sweat. Big beads of sweat kept falling from his forehead drop by drop, splashing on the ground. His face was full of pain, and his steps were a bit. He staggered, but he gritted his teeth and kept moving forward, persisting without any intention of giving up. "Master, do you want to help this Sri Lanka?" Claire couldn't bear to say in the crowd. "No need." Jason glanced at Sri Lanka behind the team, and then shook his head. Let him run by himself. As for why Wat and the others chose to let the players fly to the elixir tower by themselves, Jason felt vaguely in his heart. He understands that for Sri Lanka, this is just a small test before he enters the alchemist tower. If he can't even pass this level, then after joining the alchemist tower, he will not be able to compete in the fierce competition. Stand out. Not sure how long it took, everyone finally saw Wat and Ryan at the front stopping under a big tree. "Ha ha," everyone said, panting heavily, with sweat on their faces. "Everyone, take a rest first, and we will set off again later," Ryan said indifferently, and then sat down cross-legged. The players didn't care about their tired and sore bodies. They quickly sat down cross-legged, closed their eyes tightly at the same time, and kept running the spiritual power in their bodies to absorb the spiritual power elements in the surrounding air. One after another, the players who had fallen behind also caught up, but Sri Lanka was still at the end. It was not until less than half an hour later that Sri Lanka caught up with them out of breath. After seeing everyone, he said without saying anything, he sat down cross-legged and started practicing. After everyone's physical and spiritual energy had almost recovered, Ryan and Wat stood up again, and everyone started running again. This time everyone no longer ran along the road, but entered the mountains and forests. They continued to fly towards the depths of the mountains and forests. This flight lasted for another half a day, until everyone was panting. "What on earth is this? Why do we have to run in a hurry? Does this spiritual medicine master tower want us to exhaust the spiritual power in our body through constant flying, and then practice to improve the spiritual power in our body?" Although such a simple method is helpful to improve strength, if it is really faster than the cultivation speed, there are many cultivation methods that are more effective than this method, right? After a day of running, many people couldn't bear it anymore and wailed in their mouths. Everyone present is a genius from various major forces. They have enjoyed countless heavenly materials and earthly treasures since they were young, as well as various powerful techniques. They consume their spiritual power at all costs and practice to the extreme. They also know that they are very important to spiritual masters. Generally speaking, there will be a certain improvement, but it is an extremely difficult and stupid method. Every force has several other more effective ways to improve the strength of geniuses. However, now Ruyan and the others actually used this stupid method when it happened to them. It made all of them complain endlessly. However, they could only scream a few times while running, and then they continued to circulate the spiritual power in their bodies, absorbing the heaven and earth. The spiritual power of the time increased. As everyone continued to go deeper into the mountain forest, many people also became confused. The location of the Twin Towers has always been a mystery on the mainland. Is it deep in the mountain forest south of Lingdo City? Just when everyone was filled with doubts, suddenly, Master Wat and Master Ryan, who were flying continuously in front of them, stopped again. What appeared in front of everyone was a bottomless path. There is a mist in front of the cliffs, making it difficult to see clearly. Where is the Spirit Medicine Master Tower? How did Master What bring us to the cliff of this mountain forest? Is the pagoda of the Spiritual Medicine Master here? Everyone stopped panting, full of doubts in their hearts. Everyone, follow me next, on the cliff wall. What seemed to know everyone's doubts, and laughed loudly. Then, a cyan rune suddenly appeared in his hand and was thrown into the air. A faint spiritual power spread between heaven and earth. Spreading, the cyan rune longed in the wind after being thrown out, exuding an extremely rich spiritual power aura. Suddenly, in the canyon in front of everyone, a dazzling blue light burst out. In an instant, it was like a scorching blue sun suddenly appeared in front of them, piercing so hard that everyone covered their eyes. Then, another tremor came. In everyone's astonished eyes, a green glow rose into the sky, extremely brilliant, conveying terrifying spiritual power fluctuations. "Come in." Guardian Ruyan was the first to speak out, and he jumped into the cliff in front of him. His body instantly merged into the green light, and then disappeared in front of everyone. Everyone followed Guardian Ruyan and entered one by one, What said. Everyone was so excited that they stepped into the cliff one after another, and then they were wrapped in green light and disappeared. A strong sense of dizziness quickly spread into everyone's mind, and when everyone came back to their senses when I arrived, I was immediately stunned by the scene in front of me. What appeared in front of everyone was a complex of buildings stretching for countless miles, and figures could be vaguely seen walking back and forth between the buildings. What shocked everyone was a tall tower in the middle of the building. This is a tower that towers into the sky. The entire tower is like a mountain, rising straight up into the sky, giving people an indescribable feeling of shock. In his previous life, Jason was well informed and had seen many famous mountains, rivers, and lofty mountains on the continent, but after seeing this tower, he was still completely shocked by its magnificence. Although those famous mountains and rivers are so high into the sky, they are masterpieces of nature after all. However, it is different here. This tower was not made of giants, but was built by manpower. This is a building. I don't know how much manpower was used to build it. Its shocking significance is far beyond what the natural landscape can match. For humans, this has to be called a miracle. At the same time, Jason couldn't help but become curious. In his previous life, the continent went through years of turmoil, countless dynasties were destroyed, and finally the Lingdo Empire unified the continent. However, Jason had never heard of the Twin Towers, nor had he ever been there. We have seen such a building in the center of this continent, so where did everything here go after 3,000 years? Jason was confused. Through the previous method of entering here, Jason also understood that the location of the Spiritual Medicine Master Tower is actually similar to the secret realm of the spiritual pool in the Salem Empire. It is located in an independent space, not somewhere on the real continent. It can only be reached through a unique space passage. It is no wonder that no one on the mainland knows the true location of the Twin Towers. Although Jason and the others had arrived at a cliff in a mountain forest on the south side of Spirit Do City before, Jason dared to conclude that the entrance to the Spirit Medicine Master Tower might not really be there. If he went there next time, he would have the cyan talisman previously in Watt's hand may not be able to enter the space where the Spiritual Medicine Master's Tower is located. Looking at the building complex that stretches to the end of the line of sight, almost as far as the eye can see, and the tall tower in the middle that towers into the sky, all the players who joined the Elixir Master Tower looked at everything in front of them with shock. It was hard to imagine in my heart how all of this came to be. Even the fatigue of running around before was completely forgotten after seeing such a majestic and spectacular sight. The spiritual energy here is so strong. Suddenly, a young man exclaimed. After everyone heard this, they mobilized their spiritual energy and absorbed it with force. They immediately felt the terrifying spiritual energy fluctuations around them. The concentration of spiritual elements here was almost twice that of the outside world. The talents who felt this had inexplicable surprises on their faces. The previous flyby made them consume a lot of spiritual energy. At this time, they were absorbing it like they met a source of water in the desert. Such a strong spiritual element, no wonder the Twin Towers can attract so many great talents. Jason couldn't help but be secretly surprised. In such an environment with such a strong spiritual element, it does not mean that just one level of cultivation is equal to 2 or 3 in the outside world. What is more important is that such a strong spiritual element can unknowingly transform the human body during cultivation. It will be of great benefit to both spiritual masters and spiritual medicine masters in their future practice. Although the spiritual power elements here have not yet reached the height of 3 or 4 times that of the outside world in the Lingqi secret realm, Jason understands that the Lingqi secret realm is just a natural secret realm after all, and the spiritual medicine master tower has been transformed by the efforts of countless generations. But it has already become a perfect and mature space. Haha, little guys, welcome to the Alchemist Tower. Looking at the shock on the faces of those great talents with a smile, Protector What clapped his hands and said with a smile. And little ones, there is no need to rush to absorb the spiritual elements in the air for the time being. From now on, you will live, practice, and grow here. There will be plenty of time for you to absorb, and here, the spiritual elements from the outside world will the content is actually the lowest. Our spiritual medicine master tower has built many places dedicated to cultivation. The concentration of spiritual elements is much richer and purer than what comes here, so there is no need for you to be so anxious. Looking at the crowd, looking eager to absorb the spiritual elements, What suddenly laughed out loud. Now, everyone, come with me. After the words fell, What's whole body instantly turned into a stream of light and flew towards the building not far away. Whoosh! 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 Sri Lanka and other players also stopped absorbing, followed What, and swept towards the building complex not far away. Now, the city in front of you is the core of our elixir tower. Its name is Elixir City. What and Ryan led the crowd into the building and then introduced it. Elixir City. All of them were remembering secretly in their hearts while looking back and forth to observe the surroundings. Huh? Jason looked around. In the Elixir City, there were buildings one after another. On the streets, pedestrians were passing by in a hurry, brows furrowed, as if they were thinking about something and didn't want to waste even a moment. Some people wearing spiritual medicine masters' robes usually murmured the names of spiritual medicines and materials, while those wearing spiritual medicine masters' robes all looked anxious, and some even pulled out the swords on their waists from time to time. He chopped twice, frowned and murmured. Obviously, he was thinking about the difficulties he encountered during his cultivation. These guys. Feeling the terrifying power conveyed by these people, these talents who had just joined the Elixir Master Tower were secretly frightened. Among those they encountered, there was not even a single weak being. The weakest among them was also a 5th-level sect spirit master, which would be unimaginable to the outside world. Hey, it seems like another group of guys have come in. Just as everyone was following What and Ryan towards the center of the building complex, a frivolous voice suddenly came from not far away. I saw a group of young people slowly walking over on the street, not far away from everyone. When they saw Jason and others, they couldn't help laughing. I heard that this is the winner of this Continental Elite competition. The Continental Elite competition, isn't it a competition for spiritual masters? Does that mean that a group of people here are all spiritual masters? A young man said disdainfully. Boys, we are in the spiritual medicine master tower here. If he is not a spiritual medicine master, no matter how high his talent is, he will never be able to become a core disciple here. If he enters the core of the spiritual medicine master tower, he will only be a high-level disciple at most. Hee hee. Haha. The group of young monsters laughed, glanced at Jason and the others, and then left. In the crowd, many players gritted their teeth and clenched their fists, obviously very angry. Everyone, follow me. This is your first time here. What you have to do now is to report in. What glanced at everyone and smiled lightly. It was obvious that he was no longer surprised by what happened before.